Hello and welcome to my Pokemon Journeys, episode 95, Farewell, the Team Rocket Wanderers review. Let me tell you right now, Rocket fans, we're eating good. This was a complete banger. The Rocket gang are working a job and to see Ashen go, they call him a Gacha and get crap Pokemon and get blasted off. On landing, they realise they have to apologise to Matori and they realise that the Gacha's at fault. Hello? That's amazing. The Gacha sucks shit and I'm glad they're realising it. So we decide to follow Pelipper back to wherever the Gacha comes from to have a word with them for the Gacha always being awful, but they crash their balloon when a Swablu attacks them, and they get swallowed by a Wailord along with Pelipper. They try to use the Gacha to escape, but Pelipper decides to be useless by not dispensing it because it can apparently only give it to agents in need. But in a struggle to open its mouth, it fires off a Hydro Pump and frees them. But like, hey, the Gacha doesn't come through when it needs to. What a shock, right? But now they're stuck in some icy tundra and start chasing Pelipper again, using Meowth as bait for a Mamoswine while Jesse and James ride it. They get to a village and pass out in the cold, and suddenly wake up next to a nice warm fireplace with a large meal prepared for them, when a woman walks in. At first they don't recognise her, then they realise who it is. It's Cassidy from Team Rocket. Or not, because she reveals she quit. Team Rocket isn't all there is to life. Tired of all the missions, lectures and apologies, all things our group have struggled with, she decides to go clean, open a cafe, and do wood carving as a hobby. So I'll just say right now, this is absolutely awesome. They do a status quo shift with a character we haven't seen in a long time, which might actually explain why we haven't seen her since Diamond and Pearl. It's absolutely amazing, but also surprising she didn't retire with Biff. Seeing the group drop their rivalry with her and working hard to repay their debt is wonderful, and when this shows them a better life, they all wouldn't mind. So when Pelipper flies by, it reminds them what they were doing, but James seems hesitant to go. So Jesse, Meowth and Wobbuffet all say their goodbyes to him and leave, because he was happy, while he stays with Cassidy. And this happens again as Team Rocket run into Bob, who's opened up a bakery, and a female Meowth who looks just like Meowth's first love, Meowsy, which is insane to me. It kinda makes me wonder why they didn't just go with Meowsy, but Meowth falls in love with the lookalike. So after repaying Bill's kindness with work, and seeing Pelipper, Jesse and Wobbuffet say their goodbye to Meowth and leave. But as one last gift, he gives them a Wobbuffet air balloon. Jesse and Wobbuffet end up crashing into Pelipper because of Swablu again and end up in the desert. They start to pass out and hallucinate seeing James and Meowth, but it's the Sandshrew that wakes them, and they quickly fall into a Trapinch's pit with no strength to get out. But then the real James and Meowth arrive, and we get a beautiful scene where they explain their new lives didn't work out. James's Morpeko ate all the food at the cafe, which caused Cassidy to fire him. By the way, nice to see Morpeko again. It's been like 6 months since we last saw it. And Meowth saw that the lookalike lover Persian, so he left. All to the backtrack of Meowth's song, which hilariously cuts out as Jesse yells at him to save the stories and save her. So the lovable idiots jump into a pit as well, which screws them over. They have to ask Pelipper for help, but it refuses as it has a Gacha in its mouth. However, as they sink in, Pelipper looks at them and spits a Gacha at Trapinch, which breaks the antenna on top of it, and Pelipper flies the group out for safety. As they realise that they have no way home, Ash and Go arrive, and while they're reinvigorated, they decide to do their motto to a backtrack of Team Rocket's theme song, which is one of the most hyped anipoke songs, and want Ash to blast them off. Right back to the factory they started the episode in. So I think immediately the takeaway from the episode I really want is that the Gacha is gone for good. They are blaming it for their shortcomings this episode, and at the end a part of it breaks as Pelipper spits out to save them. But I'm not really going to hedge my bets on the Gacha being gone. However, if it is, I would say it elevates the episode to being an automatic 10 out of 10. There's really an underlying theme of luck that comes from this episode. Pelipper says changing your luck is changing your life, so it pairs really nicely with Cassidy, Butch and the Meowsy lookalike getting James and Meowth to try and change their life. And at the end, when they're all reunited, they look back and think that sometimes when you think you have bad luck, it's actually good. And I think that's a good message to have. You can always make the best with bad hands, such as Team Rocket being lucky to have each other no matter how hard it gets. But they do also mention that good luck can be bad. Yeah, they thought they could move on to a new life, but didn't pan out. I think Meowth comparing it to a Gacha is what gives me pause in thinking the Gacha is gone for good now, since we're essentially getting the message that they see a bright side of it. We also know Pelipper can retrieve things from that pit since he saved Team Rocket, so yeah, no hopes up. A criticism I do have of this episode is that it sort of feels shallow. There isn't really much plot to it. It's just going to a point, someone stays behind, they reunite at the end. I don't really have the same emotional connection to this one as something like the Diamond and Pearl episode Noodles Roaming Off, which is also focused on Team Rocket going their own ways, and what brings them back together isn't really as impactful as it was there, since you don't really get to see much of their new lives to have you really rooting for them to want to stay with Cassidy or Butch. But I still think this episode did an amazing job in really capturing the emotional core of Team Rocket. If these guys were gone, the show just wouldn't be the same because they have a lot of heart to them. They might be unhappy with their positions in the moment, but they mean a lot to each other. They're a team. And while they renew their vigour to be the best Team Rocket agents they can be, I think even having the idea in the back of their minds that there's more to life than Team Rocket could set them up to want to retire together when that time comes. And for Cassidy and Butch, I think seeing them again after all this time is absolutely wonderful, even if you don't really get to see them talk that much. They get a couple of lines before we go into the still images of a group, just helping them out before we leave them. I think I'd want more, but having such bitter rivals to Team Rocket impart a life lessons for them is really nice. I do wish Cassidy and Butch were just together. It just feels like the cafe and the bakery could be consolidated into one, and then when they go to the town where the Meowsy lookalike is, you can just have that. Because, you know, Jesse and James are connected to Cassidy and Butch more than, say, Meowth is. But then the Meowsy lookalike is, like, connected to Meowth, I guess. So all in all, I think this is a fantastic episode. There are some things I'd do a little differently, but this was such a wonderful focus on our lovable leads. I'm particularly glad we barely had any actual go in this episode and let Team Rocket lead it, and even the slightest bit of potential that Gacha has actually gone is something I'm all here for. But again, being wary of that. Thank you Pokemon Journeys, and I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Thanks for watching.